Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call this workshop to order. So the workshop of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board for October, what's the date? 11th. Write that down. 2024 is called to order. So our first action will be to establish a quorum. So Mr. Knapp, would you call the roll?
Member Andrews,
Present.
Member Bosler,
Present online.
Member Griego.
Here.
For Countryman,
Present.
Secretary Johnson,
I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
Vice President Valines is absent,
We
but
expect him though.
is expected. President Dolan.
I'm here. Joe. MJG. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We're good.
We are? Okay,
Yes.
that's quorum. We're expecting our vice president.
We have 6.
When he comes in, we can all applaud, right? Okay, any introductions or announcements?
No.
Mr. Lee
No
first?
announcements today.
No announcements today? Anyone else have a pertinent announcement? Okay, one thing up. Nobody there gets that. Okay, then we'll, I'm gonna just briefly say this. I'm gonna be calling on Christine Van Skyke with Program Manager Flood Planning and Programs Branch. I have to get all these lengthy names. She's going to be the person who will do the run of the show. But we have board items, which are presentations regarding the Yola Bypass Cash Flow Region, Department of Water Resources to provide information on the work of the master plan draft for that same region, and then the representatives from the Army Corps of Engineers, which I understand are going to present remotely because they're actually in different parts of our fine nation, but they know about us. And they will be talking about the comprehensive study, which is a companion document that the Corps does, and we do the other, and we all just work together. Then we do public comments after that, no closed session. We don't know how long this will go, but after each presentation will be an opportunity for board members to interact and members of the public as well. So that's it. Did I get it right? You wouldn't tell me anyway, because you're a nice man. So let me turn this over to Ms. Van Skyke to introduce the projects and then the presenters as it goes on. Good morning.
Thank you, President Dolan and members of the board. If you can pull up our slide presentation, we'll get started. My name is Christine Van Skyke, and I am a program manager in the Flood Planning and Programs Branch. And I'm here today, as President Dolan said, to talk about the Yola Bypass Cash Flow Region and several important efforts that we are going to be presenting here today during this workshop. So I'll wait for that slide to go. Next, oh, I have that control. Let me get that to you. All right, so to go over the meeting purpose, today's workshop is to provide an update on all things Yola Bypass Cash Flow, or you'll hear YBCS. We'll say that a lot today. And the board activities that support several key activities that are going on in this region. We're very glad to have our partners here today to provide updates on the development of the YBCS Master Plan, public release, as well as the Federal Comprehensive Study. Our goal for this workshop is to provide information on these critical activities to our regional partners and interested parties, and to gain feedback from the board about this effort. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. So here on the screen is the presentation outline and the speakers. This includes Andrea Buckley, our Deputy Executive Officer, and she'll provide an overview on the board's flood planning and program activities. I'll cover regional alignment and the YBCS partnership activities and touch a little bit on the program environmental impact report we are preparing to accompany the master plan. Yay. Jordan Robbins, our tribal liaison, will update us on tribal engagement. And then I'll turn it over to Mary Jimenez, our DWR partner, to provide an update on the YBCS master plan development.
I just wanted to make a note that our vice president has arrived.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for part 2 today, our partners from the Army Corps of Engineers have joined us online. Brooke Schlenker, Planning Regional Technical Specialist, and Larissa Boland, Project Manager from our Sacramento District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, will provide an update on the federal comp study. Any questions on or comments on the plan for today? We hope to have a conversational workshop, and we do encourage questions and comments throughout the presentations. And as President Dolan said, we will pause between topics to check for discussions. Any questions or comments before proceeding? All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Andrea Buckley.
Thank you. That was a good overview and introduction, better than what I did. So thank you very much.
Good morning, President Dolan, Vice President Valines, members of the board. My name is Andrea Buckley. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer of the board overseeing environmental services, land management of the Sacramento and San Joaquin District, Sacramento and San Joaquin Drainage District, and what we will be speaking on today, our flood planning and programs branch. Board staff supports flood system improvement and regional planning of multi-benefit projects by working closely with the RFMPs, regional flood management plans, and regional agencies all along the California Central Valley system. Today's workshop will focus on the Yolo Bypass and Cache Slough region, shown here in gold, represented by the lower Sacramento River and Delta North RFMP. The board plays a critical role in the collaborative actions that affect the Yolo Bypass and Cache Slough regions. Our staff focuses on providing support for regional engagement among federal, state, and local agencies, regional tribes, and interested parties in order to maintain relationships, coordinate, and collaborate on plans and programs. We prioritize and support communication engagement within the Central Valley. Our role at the board is to support the relationship building that occur over time, build trust, and work together to overcome communication barriers, provide information and resources, and support regional and local efforts and investments. And the board also serves as a guide in the development of the implementation of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, recommended actions, and in our 5-year updates. And more on that, the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan implementation. We support the board's commitment to the development and implementation of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan's recommended actions. Our staff works collaboratively with Department of Water Resources on the development of future Central Valley Flood Protection Plan updates, and we are involved in the project delivery team for the 2027 update. Planning for climate change resiliency of the flood system and support for coordination of ecosystem enhancement projects continue to be a priority for our programs throughout the region. That
You have to put this one up,
Absolutely.
but we've been kind of giving hints here that the screen and the back wall that's directly in the eyesight of the board is blinking and is a distraction, but not for this photo. Sorry.
As you hear today in a later presentation by our core partners, the board is committed to an expansive effort in the Yolo Bypass Cache Slough region. In September 2023, pictured here, an agreement was signed between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, DWR, and the board in a commitment to support federal investment. The Vertical Team Alignment Memo, also known as the VTAM, was signed in June 2024 and has begun and work has begun to enable the Corps and the board to establish a vision for California's largest watershed. These regional and geographic complexities require a fully engaged non-federal sponsor and aligned state partners, SAFECA, DWR, and a number of subject matter experts in support of this effort. This outcome of our work can be used to maintain the federal interest and successfully leverage future federal cost share. Almost there. The state's commitment of this project includes staff time and expertise to develop system-wide programmatic strategies at a comprehensive level of detail that requires staff to coordinate the non-federal sponsor information. Planning and engagement in the Central Valley. As mentioned, board staff have a key role in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan updates and the conservation strategy in the region. In addition, many regional activities require coordination and participation by the board and partner agencies to facilitate and support these regional efforts. The RFMP Lower Sacramento River Delta North Regional Flood Management Plan Corridor Management Framework set the stage for the efforts of the partnership. Our key, oh, I need to go back. Jumped ahead. There's also other key initiatives that flood planning and program staff participates in, including the Sacramento and San Joaquin Drainage District Assessment District Feasibility Study, Sustainable Groundwater Management Program and projects, the State Water Plan and Delta Plan, and the Governor's Water Resiliency Portfolio. A little on Senate Bill 369, the board's commitment to the partnership. Continue work leading and developing the YOLO Bypass Cashew Partnership Master Plan, Tribal Engagement, and the Program Environmental Impact Report as the CEQA lead is the board's commitment. Designated by Senate Bill 369, the YOLO Bypass Cashew Partnership Multi-Benefit Program Act was codified to establish the Partnership Multi-Benefit Program. As shown here, SB 369 prioritizes projects for multiple objectives. Oh. Identifies and collaborates to resolve challenges and work together to create paths forward for programmatic and regulatory compliance and to secure funding mechanisms and support long-term goals for the region. To support pillars, in addition to flood and habitat benefits, to also include agriculture, recreation, and water quality and supply. The board's flood planning and program branch was created in 2020 under the board's organizational structure to provide resources to lay groundwork for future planning efforts to support flood risk reduction projects, programs, activities, many of which are implemented with substantial federal resources. Substantial planning and coordination between the board, the state's non-federal sponsor, DWR, various state agencies, and local non-federal sponsors, and other local governmental agencies and entities is the primary focus of this branch. Staff in the flood planning and programs branch focus on the planning efforts and agency engagements and our technical subject matter experts and public policy, technical assistance, collaborative governance, CEQA, facilitation and conflict resolution, project management, and project development. And that concludes the slides on flood planning and programs. And next we'll have Christine Van Syke return to the podium to present the board's engagement on the YOLO Bypass Cash Slough Partnership. Any questions about the flood planning and programs branch?
Board want to ask anything at this point? I don't see that.
Christine?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Andrea. Looks like our PowerPoint has a little mind of its own today, so we'll see if we can get that controlled. All
Well,
right.
we do have 3 screens, but the one on the back wall is gone, which is good because it was going.
Okay. All right, next we'll talk more a little bit, focus in on our regional alignment and the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership. As Andrea has described earlier, federal commitment to the region through WRDA 2021 ensures that alignment with the partnership will enable the comprehensive study to support these regional priorities. The board, as the non-federal sponsor, continues to align and support the diverse interests of the partners in this collaborative effort. This includes the development of communication strategies for the partnership and for the comprehensive study. Board staff works closely with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and state partners to gain public acceptance and support for study efforts and schedules. This includes coordination with the YBCS partner agencies and coordination with the representatives to develop communications and outreach. Regional alignment includes keeping stakeholders informed about projects and strategies, including partnership and master plan recommendations. Working with our regional partners, we encourage the participation of disadvantaged communities with a focus on improving access to information and resources. Board staff and regional partners have also developed communication strategies, methods, and tools to meet the evolving needs of key audiences throughout the region and the development of these key plans and efforts, and we seek continuous improvement. This includes informing the board and the public to increase awareness and enhance public understanding of the flood risks and ecosystem restoration actions and other partnership priorities. The board serves as a conduit to leverage existing relationships with elected officials, agencies, and organizations to ensure their voices are heard. Our commitment to communication engagement is key. This includes encouraging and implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion in actions in all the board's activities. So the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Partnership vision describes that the region is a dynamic landscape with both challenges and opportunities and diverse interests. The YBCS partnership is an opportunity to develop an integrated landscape with local, state, regional, tribal, and federal interests being considered and advanced together. The dedication and commitment of the YBCS partnership partners is to pursue the vision of the partnership, planning for an integrated, resilient future. We look forward to building up this momentum in the years to come, fostering a resilient and thriving region for the benefit of all those who depend on it. Here on the screen, you've seen before the icons of the 16 agencies that come together as partner agencies for the partnership. 15 agencies signed an MOU in 2016, and in 2021, SB 369 added West Safeca to create this 16 partner partnership. Additionally, several tribes in the region are consulting under Assembly Bill 52, and Jordan will talk about that a little bit. Next. So the partnership pillars represent the partnership goals that were developed by partner agencies to represent their priorities and also identify key priorities in the region, including flood, agriculture, recreation, habitat, water quality, and supply. Partnership work groups will continue to support these pillars, and we will work with partner agency representatives leading the efforts for the partnership, including the support for the master plan and development of the program environmental impact report. I'll tell you a little bit more about that after Jordan speaks, which is launching to further develop strategic and long-term implementation for the partnership. So the master plan is the beginning of this long-term resilient effort. Continuing to envision the partnership engagement is a priority for board and board staff. The Flood Planning and Programs Branch supports several key work groups identified here in the draft governance framework to ensure long-term and continued support for the partnership. Board staff leads the organizing committee and the communication and engagement efforts for the partnership and acts as the lead agency, as I mentioned, for the PEIR under CEQA. Board staff also co-leads the strategic planning work group and facilitates the partnership forum. They produce the annual report and support the executive committee, including briefing materials and meetings and many other leadership aspects of the partnership. Board staff lead and manage communication and engagement in order to support the efforts among partners and effectively address the priorities and concerns of each party and the groups that they represent. We work with partner agencies to understand one another's independent authorities and regulatory responsibilities through participation in these collaborative efforts. We maintain key relationships with local experts to ensure technical input is valued. Board staff actively seeks to expand and broaden partnership engagement. The YBCS Partnership Gov Delivery Listserv includes over 1,100 subscribers, and board staff supports both the website and the Gov Delivery Listserv communication platform, which is represented in the purple box on this chart. The board and its partners are committed to the YBCS efforts to ensure that we have continued support for the partnership vision and a commitment to working to resolve conflicts among partners. The goal of the partnership is to remove these barriers in order to advance projects and programs that support the 6 pillars in the region, and also to seek long-term implementation and planning, including operations and maintenance, permitting, and advancing positive outcomes while evaluating the trade-offs and opportunities. So with that, that concludes the regional conversation around the partnership, and I'll pause for questions or conversation.
Board members,
I have a question.
Yes.
member Countryman?
This is like the 20,000-foot overview thing. Are we going to hear anything today about specific projects and concerns that are being addressed?
Well, one of the opportunities that we have to talk about today is 2 of the major efforts that we have in the region, including the master plan that the Department of Water Resources and the board are working on together to represent that exact question. So we really hope that this master plan will present an opportunity to address many of these issues, to look at projects in the region and how they work together in a suite of opportunity to benefit the region, and how we and recommendations moving forward on how to truly implement this effort. And then also Army Corps of Engineers bring in the federal comprehensive study, which is a federal look at the region as well, and they'll discuss more about those actions.
So will we hear about specifics in these later presentations?
Yes, specifics about the plans and how those efforts are moving forward at this point.
I'll wait till later.
Member Countryman, could you do this when you speak so we could hear your eloquence? But as I understand it, there's not going to be a list of possible projects by name or location or idea. That's something to be developed through this collaboration with the master plan group.
I have a particular concern about the old gates at the Sacramento Weir. We had to fight like heck to not have gates put on the new extension. But the long-term goal from an operation and maintenance viewpoint should be to remove the gates on the old structure. That was built in 1911, and they don't really serve a need currently, and they're dangerous and costly to operate and maintain. So I have a real interest if that's being considered with all these studies.
I can see members of the staff noting that. So that's not the solution today, but you're right. And keep bringing it up. Because it is something to be done.
Thank you, Member Countryman. Any other questions or conversation about regional efforts, partnership, or the board's flood planning and program efforts?
I don't
All
see
right.
any.
All right, so next up, then I would like to please invite Jordan Robbins, our tribal liaison, to talk about that. It has a mind of its own. Gotta go back and forth.
Thank you, Christine. Good morning, President Dolan, Vice President Villines, and members of the board. My name is Jordan Robbins, and I'm a Senior Environmental Scientist Specialist and the board's tribal liaison. In the next several slides, I'll provide an overview of tribal engagement thus far on the Yolo Bypass Cash Slough Master Plan, including tribal interests and next steps with engagement. Based on information provided by the Native American Heritage Commission and DWR, there are 14 tribes that have cultural or traditional affiliation. Oops, the slide does have a mind of its own. There are 14 tribes that have cultural or traditional affiliation with the Yolo Bypass Cache Slough planning area. Those tribes are listed here and include the 3 consulting tribes in bold text. Each tribe was invited to review, comment, and participate in several workshops on the administrative draft. To begin the discussion of tribal interests, we want to provide some contextual background. The Yolo Bypass holds cultural importance for many tribes as a sacred and ceremonial place with traditional gathering areas and ancestral sites. Tribal connections to ancestral landscapes are deeply rooted in tribal cultural practices and continue to this day, including ceremonies, gatherings, and prayers to honor and respect the land, water, ecosystem, and ancestors. Additional tribes upstream and downstream of the Yolo Bypass Cache Slough may also have indirect interest in the region. With that in mind, DWR and the board are working with all interested tribes through Assembly Bill 52, referred to as AB 52, consultation and other engagement per the California Natural Resources Tribal Consultation Policy adopted by the board and the DWR Tribal Engagement Policy. Any information shared and discussed by tribes through AB 52 consultations is confidential and protected. The board is leading tribal engagement with valuable support from DWR's Office of the Tribal Policy Advisor for the master plan and the related program environmental impact report. This has been the focus of tribal consultation and engagement efforts thus far. As mentioned, the board and DWR are committed to early and often communications with tribes on the Yolo Bypass Cache Slough Master Plan and Program EIR. In 2022, AB 52 consultation was initiated. In May 2022, representatives from 2 tribes attended the pre-AB 52 informational meeting held by the board and DWR to introduce the YBCS Partnership Master Plan and Program EIR efforts. In mid-August 2022, the board sent invitations to tribes to consult government to government through AB 52 or through the California Natural Resources Agency's Tribal Consultation Policy. 3 tribes requested consultation with the board under AB 52, and initial AB 52 consultation meetings were held with each requesting tribe. Also in mid-August, the board sent a copy of the Notice of Preparation of the Program EIR to tribes. In 2023, engagement focused on multiple written communications to tribes in order to provide updates on the admin draft master plan's development, upcoming opportunities for tribes to review the admin draft master plan, notifying tribes of the release of the admin draft of the master plan, and inviting tribes to an informational meeting on the admin draft master plan in early 2024. In 2024, representatives from 3 tribes attended the tribal informational meeting held in mid-January on the admin draft master plan. In February, communications via email and phone call were conducted by the board to tribes to share the admin draft master plan's appendices and figures and provide an opportunity to ask questions or comments on the master plan. In spring 2024, tribes were invited to the YBCS Partnership Forum held, and representatives from 3 tribes attended. The Partnership Forum provided information on the master plan, program EIR, and other YBCS regional efforts. Invitations to 2 facilitated comment review sessions on the admin draft master plan were also sent in the spring. In May, DWR and the board had a second AB 52 consultation meeting with a consulting tribe. In June, 5 tribes attended and provided comments during the 2 facilitated comment review sessions with YBCS partner agencies to discuss comments received on the admin draft master plan. Per tribal requests from the June meeting, the board and DWR held 2 tribal workshops in July 2024 for tribes to review, discuss, and comment on the admin draft master plan. In total, representatives from 6 tribes attended at least one of the comment review sessions or tribal workshops. Tribal engagement will continue as the master plan and program EIR are developed and finalized. The master plan includes a summary of interest and shared, a summary of interest shared in initial meetings with tribes, the board, and DWR. Review and input from tribal representatives is highly valued and necessary to properly and respectfully reflect tribal values and priorities. 2 sections of the master plan were developed by early consultation with tribes. These are sections 1.3.5, which is titled Tribal Interest and Vision, and section 2.6, which is titled Tribal Engagement and Planning. Tribal interests we have heard thus far include integrate tribal knowledge, values, interests, and nature-based solution in the master plan, project planning processes, and the partnership's 6 pillars. Tribal knowledge, also referred to as traditional ecological knowledge, tribal science, or traditional indigenous knowledge, as cumulative knowledge that has been passed down through generations and supported a symbiotic relationship between tribes and the ecological environment of their ancestral homelands. Protect cultural and tribal cultural resources in the planning area. Engage tribes early and often in project planning. Engage tribes in annual operations and maintenance, planning and implementation. Explore opportunities for tribal access, use, gathering, and co-management associated with ancestral lands under the ownership or control of the state of California, pursuant to the September 25th, 2020 Statement of Administration Policy, Native American and Ancestral Lands. Interest was also expressed in learning more about the partnership, committees, and workshops, and potential approaches to tribal engagement in the master plan and program EIR development, including long-range partnership planning and implementation that supports exchanging information and collaboration. Information from tribal consultations and workshops were used to refine and develop sections of the master plan, including the recommendations for future potential master plan implementation efforts. Tribal interests were expressed in several of the recommendations. However, tribes voiced a potential interest in being included as implementing or coordinating entities for these 6 recommendations. Recommendation 1, the Federal Comprehensive Study of the Yellow Bypass Region. Recommendation 2, collaboratively identify, prioritize, develop, and implement flood management improvements to the YBCS region. 3, developing landscape scale permitting strategies to standardize and streamline the permitting processes for O&M and projects that support multiple benefits within the YBCS region. 4, apply guidance from the California Water Plan Update 2023 by coordinating with and including tribes in project planning, implementation, and long-term management. 5, provide additional capacity for project proponents and local maintaining agencies to implement and manage projects. 6, identify actionable strategies and best practices, as well as funding for sustainable long-term O&M prior to implementation of single and multi-benefit projects within the YBCS region that support optimal management of flood protection infrastructure, conveyance, capacity, regional agriculture, tribal and cultural resources, and habitat. Takeaways from tribal collaboration and engagement during development and review of the master plan can inform and guide future YBCS partnership and individual project proponent efforts. This includes how to approach tribal engagement and information sharing, how to promote tribal participation in early planning and throughout project development, design, and implementation phases, and the importance of and the importance and benefits of integrating tribal knowledge, values, and interests. Tribal representatives have expressed an interest in all 6 partnership pillars, including the corresponding management planning and actions for all 6 pillars to minimize resource impacts and support or incorporate tribal knowledge and values. They have also expressed potential ability to inform annual planning processes to coordinate on anticipated O&M activities for the YBCS planning area. And I will pause for if there are any questions.
Vice President Valines, then Member Countryman Valines first.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm going to make an assumption when you talked about the meetings are confidential. is that to protect like cultural resources or, sacred sites and things like that?
Correct. Yes. So any information shared in AB 52 consultations is anything that can be expressed by the tribe in that conversation. And they can state whether or not that information is confidential or able to share, but we err on the side of caution and just treat everything as confidential.
Okay. And then so just following that kind of process, if somebody were to let's in the planning that we're doing, they come up with something and say, look, this is an area to be protected or something, we would just factor that into our planning without necessarily noting that, but it does get addressed.
Yes, correct. It does get addressed. So confidential information can be as specific as showing sensitive areas on maps. And so that would not
Right.
be shared. It would just be our knowledge. And then we are able to translate that into the master plan or the program EIR.
Okay. And then we keep them posted that we've recognized that and.
Yes, we can explain that we had an AB 52 consultation meeting and information was discussed and shared.
Okay.
And things
Great.
like that.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
So, the tribes have indicated interest in the annual planning, operation and maintenance activities.
Yes.
What exactly is, what's the concern there, or how do we integrate them into operation and maintenance activities?
Some of the comments that come to mind firsthand are vegetation maintenance. There are plant species that are culturally sensitive to each tribe. So mowing operations can impact the gathering of those plants and also the future ability of those plants being there for future ceremonies.
Well, I guess I mean, that all makes sense, but what you said there, but this annual,
Yeah.
is there some concept that before we do maintenance, that we'll have consultation or something like that every year?
I believe that it has been part of the conversation, and the conversations are ongoing for annual O&M practices. Yeah. Okay.
It just seems like that could be a problem. If every time we're gonna do maintenance, we have to have consultation prior to it.
I think it's more of the annual processing plan, and I think that DWR may also already actively consult with tribes on operations and maintenance. Yeah,
I think you're doing great.
Okay.
Yeah, member countrymen, really, I think each situation and each opportunity that we have to communicate and understand the tribal interests happens, over the course of time, not only just annually, but that consultation and those efforts from both DWR and the board are ongoing.
If I could interject, it seems to me that this is on the list because it's something to be incorporated into the master plan of how to handle. No one's actually solved it yet. We don't
Um,
have a master plan yet. It's being developed, right?
Correct. We have a master plan that has been reviewed with tribes, especially those two sections. And these are the comments that we're hearing from and the impacts that annual operations and maintenance, such as mowing and vegetation practices, do impact those tribes.
So the bulleted list on the prior slide are goals and part of the discussion and consultation with the tribes. But I can completely understand you do maintenance. Boy, it would be nice to have vegetation maintenance that is focused on invasives that are harmful, but also respect of sites that don't need to be mowed
Correct.
or churned.
Yes, and from conversations, tribes are very much aware of the fire hazards and importance of vegetation management and invasive species as well. I mean, some do choke out some of the plant species that they are, wanting to gather themselves.
If you could get rid of all the Arunda, I'd be very happy. It's just as destructive to so many things, including cultural resources. No. Okay. My only request to your lovely young people is to slow the speed of your speech.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll hand the presentation back over to Christine.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you, Jordan. So I'll finish up here with the board's presentation to talk a little bit more about our responsibility as a lead agency for the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. We are in the midst of developing a program environmental impact report. We call it a PEER. And it will be prepared to evaluate the YBCS master plan. And the purpose of the PEER is to consider and evaluate the potential actions and concepts that are identified in the master plan, but at a programmatic level. The program CEQA process, during the public review period, the public, tribes, and agencies will have the opportunity to review the peer analysis and provide comments. The board will hold at least one meeting to both inform the public of key results of the environmental analysis as well as to receive feedback. At the end of the public review period, a final peer will be prepared. For any significant impacts identified in a peer, there will be a few supplemental documents that will be prepared, such as findings that will identify how the impact was considered and, if possible, avoided or lessened. At the end of this process, the board, as the CEQA lead agency, will consider all the information and then make decisions regarding if the board will certify and make final the peer has been completed in compliance with CEQA, approved the program as described in the final peer, and then they may choose to adopt the master plan. Yes.
Your chart doesn't show a date for the draft notice of availability. When's that gonna happen?
Yes, so it is anticipated that the peer development will follow the public release of the master plan and that a public draft peer will be available in early 2025. Over the next few months, we'll be developing the final public release of the master plan, and then the accompanying peer will follow.
So are we looking at January 2025 or what's?
So at this time, because the analysis for the master plan and those items that will help us to develop the program environmental impact report are currently underdeveloped. We're refining the data, and we're working with our partner agencies to finalize the steps to get the public master plan release ready. Those considerations will occur over the next several months. And so the actual release timeline, we're really targeting for early January to allow those committees and those work groups to finalize and complete their submitted documents that'll help us improve that master plan and prepare it for release. So February, March-ish of 2025, we're thinking the peer will follow. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And yes,
This is the president again.
please.
Of course, the input that's received on the public administrative draft might really dictate what those next schedules would be. So I think it's entirely appropriate that you say early 2025 and not a specific date, because some of our partners might be concerned that they weren't truly consulted.
Yes, and we're working on that in the next couple months. We're working with our partner agencies and those that help to submit comments and review that administrative draft to further evolve and prepare this draft so that the partners can support it and we can move forward with the opportunity. And Mary Jimenez is going to be up next to tell us a little bit more about the master plan, the timing around the master plan, and what that looked like as far as the development of that project.
There aren't any hidden agendas here. It's just a lot of discussion that needs to go forward. And so there can't be specific dates on it. People might feel cramped.
Yeah, we want
Early
to.
2025. It just feels like it's here tomorrow.
It is. And we want to give the experts the time and the breadth that they need in order to provide that valuable input to make that a valuable and useful outcome.
Okay. Thank you. Board members? Okay.
So at this
Introduce next
time,
up.
this is the end of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board's presentation. We can have more discussion if you have any other questions about the topics we reviewed today. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to my partner and colleague, Mary Jimenez from the Department of Water Resources, to talk more about the master plan. If you're ready for that, President Dolan.
Not quite.
Okay, no worries. And then.
Executive officer did whisper to me that now we've concluded 3A, which is the sections of the board, to ask if there are any public comments. Anyone in the audience want to ask a question or comment on what we've heard so far? Okay, I don't see anybody standing up. Do we have any hands up online? How many onlines do we have? 46 are watching and listening. Okay, we'll be more polite. I see no comment, so let's proceed. Thank you.
All right, I'll hand it over to Mary and we'll pull up the Part 3B presentation at this time. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Mary Jimenez with the Department of Water Resources. Pleased to be here this morning.
Good morning. We're pleased to have you.
Thank you. The purpose of my presentation this morning is to update the board on the latest progress in developing the Yolo Bypass Cash Loop Master Plan, including an overview of the current draft that is in progress, key issues arising during agency partner and tribal government review of the administrative draft this year, and an updated schedule. So hopefully some of the content I'll provide in this part of the presentation will build upon and further confirm answers to some of the questions that my colleagues Christine and Jordan provided. Okay. Something seemed to be wrong here, sorry. The purpose of the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow Master Plan is to guide continued project planning and implementation in this region consistent with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and its conservation strategy. It is also to provide valuable information into the Corps of Engineers Yolo Bypass System Comprehensive Study that will be discussed again later today, and support continued efforts to advance the goals of the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow Partnership. To meet its purpose, the master plan is being prepared from the perspectives of DWR and the board, utilizing the partnership's collaborative approach. It is providing hydrologic and hydraulic analyses, considering the projected impacts of climate change on the flood system, and an ecosystem baseline report. Both the hydrologic and hydraulic and ecosystem baseline conditions are being developed to reflect a 2019 condition, which was near the onset of our master planning effort. The master plan also includes draft recommendations that are meant to be actionable in guiding the path forward and identifies currently available funding sources to support continued development and implementation of a variety of projects in this region. As a region-scale planning document consistent with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, the master plan is not regulatory and does not advocate for specific projects that have been analyzed as part of its development. Development of this Yolo Bypass Cash Flow Master Plan is a key component of strengthening alignment between multiple local and regional plans with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and Conservation Strategy, as well as with the Corps of Engineers comprehensive study that will be discussed further today. The pyramid is meant to depict a visual representation of the efforts to continue to seek to better align these efforts. The draft master plan describes and emphasizes the need for collaboration and recognition of shared and unique perspectives between multiple agency partners, Native American tribes, and other public interests to deliver envisioned multi-benefit outcomes in this region. The importance of role of key project elements in producing desired benefits or outcomes. Consideration for phasing of projects and phasing of components of projects within larger or more complex projects that are underway, as well as coordinated implementation and leveraging the venues and agency relationships within the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow Partnership. The hydrologic and hydraulic analysis, or for short, H&H, for those that are less familiar with the details, is included in the master plan to provide an updated and refined technical foundation for continued project planning and implementation in this region, reflecting a robust climate change analysis consistent with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and state policies for incorporation of the latest climate science into planning. This slide and the next 3 slides that you'll see in the presentation include some graphical content that is in the administrative draft master plan that depict potential project features that could be incorporated into projects as they are further developed in different parts of the bypass in order to deliver benefits that are aligned with the pillars of the YOLO Bypass Cash Loop Partnership, previously described by my colleagues as priority areas of interest. These are intended to apply to the YOLO bypass as a whole as a menu of ingredients for future projects without being overly site-specific. For instance, improvements to the bypass levees, flow capacity, and conveyance of the bypass channel, things like erosion control, levee setbacks, could all produce benefits such as reduced flood stages, address structural deficiencies for flood infrastructure, improve conveyance, or reduce or optimize flood system maintenance. Yes.
This is going to be a really random question, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
The left side levee, the agriculture, what are those like little random mounds that are running through the agriculture?
Could be agricultural berms. Rice
Oh, rice.
checks.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So it's whatever we want it to be. I was just
It is. It's graphical.
First of all, is that like digging, you know, is there, perfect.
I think it's an indication of ag use, but I haven't seen in the last 20 years that kind of rice check.
Thank you.
They're rectangles.
Okay.
But this is the bypass, so you don't know. Did that conclude your remarks, Mr. Blind?
literally it.
Understood. If we can approve, if there are, on a more serious note, if there are comments that can improve the graphics, it's welcome. We're continuing to look to revise these if there's things that aren't clear.
Well, I have one, because
Yeah.
I think the challenge of these are people thinking this is it. So anyway, that can be a little bit more highlighted on this. You did say it's descriptive, it's an idea, it's something to think about. But
Mhm.
whenever you do a diagram, they're both helpful because they're a visual of something that might occur. But they're also kind of viewed as you already decided, and we haven't. These are concepts to include. That's not a map of something that's going to happen.
Correct. Thank you.
All these challenges. And when I look at the 16 partners, I say that as well, with great respect for their partnership.
Are there any more? Okay. Additional components to deliver flood system benefits include weir extensions, such as the extension of Sacramento Weir that is currently under construction by the Corps today. And I will add a modification to those weirs as well. And there were some great ideas brought up by board member Countryman with regards to weir modifications earlier today as well. An array of potential habitat project features is also included and featured in diagram, including a few you'll see here on the slide: wildlife-friendly agricultural enhancements, restoration of tidal marsh, waterfowl habitat, and shaded riverine aquatic and riparian habitats, as well as removal of fish passage barriers. These types of features would deliver a variety of ecosystem-related benefits, including recovery of native fishes, improvement of fish passage, reduction of fish stranding, management of invasive species, that is of great interest to a number of folks, improvement to geomorphic functionality, increases in nutrient production and export, as well as providing opportunities for Native American traditional uses and practices. I'll pause for any comments or discussion around the habitat features.
Any comments or discussion on this slide?
Okay.
I don't see any. Next.
An array of potential Project features for agriculture are also included in the master plan and in the draft form, including improvements to agricultural drainage, water control structures, and gates. These features would improve quality and functionality of agricultural lands in and around the bypass, could improve access for agriculture and flood maintenance needs, irrigation and drainage, and promote continued agriculture and economic development. The last chapter of the administrative draft master plan contains draft recommendations to guide the path forward following completion of this master plan. These are intended to be actionable opportunities that further support implementation of the CVFPP in this region, the comprehensive study, and the continued efforts of the partnership inherent in the purpose. Within the list of draft recommendations included in the master plan, some are at least partially funded and already underway, such as the recommendations related to conducting the comprehensive study, but others have yet to be funded and have a lot more work to be done. Development of more specific actions and work plans are expected to proceed as additional funding is secured. Although DWR and the board play major roles as two partners in this partnership, it is not expected that the state would fund all of these actions alone. Federal and local contributions are also needed. This slide contains one example recommendation from the draft master plan so that the board can generally see the level of detail that is presented. So this example includes a list of actions that could further be undertaken by the partnership as a whole if and as additional funding is secured. It is expected that DWR and the board would participate in these actions as partnership members, but we would not necessarily need to lead all of them. I'm happy to pause here before I go on to the next slide if there are thoughts or comments around the recommendations. Okay.
It's very thorough list of the discussion and the actions that are needed for this to be a true partnership and successful. And if you could figure out where the funding would come from, that would be great to know.
It would be.
Counting on you, Ms. Menace.
Thank you. Yes. And so this then summarizes a variety of issues. So we had a variety of issues that arose during review of the administrative draft by agency partners and tribal governments this year. A subset of those key issues are summarized here on the slide. This is not all encompassing, but we really tried to boil down to a subset that we felt were number one, high priority, and number two would be really good for discussion today. But it's not meant to be exclusive if there's other topics that people want to discuss. So some of the key issues summarized on the slide here that arose from administrative draft review include unequal treatment of the 6 partnership pillars in the master plan draft, the purpose of including projects in the master plan, and a variety of reactions to those projects individually, a desire for more or different projects to be developed to more broadly contribute towards agriculture and pillars other than flood and habitat, clarity of the master plan purpose, benefits, impacts, and trade-offs that pertain to areas where land would be converted from agriculture to habitat, as you can imagine, very sensitive and very controversial. Issues related to the level of detail of master plan analyses, and concerns about the potential for cumulative impacts to the region. Lastly, there were major comments submitted regarding the need for more funding for agriculture in particular. So I'm happy to pause here. Yes.
Member Countryman, then President Dolan.
So on the, one of your previous slides, you showed improved
Water control
Thank you.
for farming within the bypass. Is this what, when you say funding needs and opportunities for agriculture, is that the type of, what are specifically does agricultural need? Or
That's a good point.
That's my question too. Was there any specificity on funding that was necessary for agriculture?
Yeah, those are examples of actions right? But the message has been that there's more, that there's more that could be needed that's not necessarily on that slide, and trying to get specificity on those things.
So there's a feeling from the agricultural community that things that they're interested in aren't funded as much as they need to be. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's one of the things I understand.
We have a hand up from Member Andrews.
Good
Who
morning.
unmutes? Oh, good morning.
Am I unmuted? Thank you very much, and thanks for this presentation. It's been helpful to understand the scope of this effort. One of the things that I'm interested about, and I don't know if it has been directly addressed in the document or explicitly not addressed, and that's the level of importance attributed to each of the 6 pillars. They're all important. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit, Ms. Jimenez, about the intention of how those pillars would be treated as this master plan is being developed.
Thank you, Board Member Andrews. I appreciate the question. So among the response to that we're trying to engage with folks on is that we acknowledge within the authorities and funding that we've had at DWR on the board, most of the work we've been able to put in leveraging the flood plan is on the flood and habitat pillars. We've been working to try to advance those other pillars as they relate as we can. We've been very limited in how far we can take those topic areas. And we feel like among the ways to address that is to support other partners where their authorities and interests align with those pillars and doing more with us. But we've only been able to take things so far as of this time, and there's a lot more work remaining to be done.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry. Who would be
Member Countryman.
the partner to advance the agricultural interests?
That's a
I think it's the
good
counties.
question.
Is who?
My guess, I think it's counties that are actually asking for that. Particularly YOLO.
Farm Bureau?
Yes. The local farm bureaus are. As far as I know, this state hasn't given that since this is the master plan of YOLO bypass and not San Joaquin Valley yet. It would be even more challenging. It's a tough nut. This is a terrain. Its initial use long ago was for floodwater passage. And over the century, other uses clearly are very active there. And most of them are going to continue. Refuges, wildlife areas, agriculture. So it's sort of like that. And Brian and I are part of the executive committee, so I do know some of the conversation. And the conversation of try to figure out how the 6 pillars feel that they are being addressed and their interests are part of the master plan. But it is clear that this master plan is also going to inform the next update of the plan. So there's a bit of an emphasis on that. And sometimes the money comes for just certain projects and not something someone else wants. It's kind of like my family at 7 and my brother's always saying, Mom likes you best. And it's not accurate, except it is. So it's challenging, but it's not being avoided.
I mean, it's really challenging because I don't think that DWR has shown much expertise in agriculture. So if somebody wants to put forward agriculture, they need to bring that forward, right?
Yes, and I think that's what Ms. Menace was saying and what would be in the plan. I doubt that there's a farmer anywhere, maybe there is, and that person will call me, who really wants DWR to dictate their farming practices or even describe them.
Don't wait too long for that call.
but they certainly don't want federal or state government projects to harm them. Anyone else on the board? I don't want to dominate this. Do you have more slides on this?
This is it for the issues. After this, I was going to move into talking about schedule.
Oh, okay. So this is regarding the environment, the master plan? I don't see any more. Anyone in the audience? We have some new participants back there. Don't be shy. All right. I don't see, is that a hand up? No. Any hands up? Here? Okay. Then you can take your next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just a few more slides to discuss more detail on our schedule. So this slide provides an overview of our schedule over the past year and looking into next year. Since last winter, as mentioned, we have released administrative drafts of the master plan and appendices to partnership representatives and interested tribes, participated in an earlier board public workshop, conducted multiple review sessions with administrative draft reviewers to discuss their comments and proposed edits to the master plan to address those comments, continued to conduct robust tribal engagement, thanks very much to the leadership of my colleague Jordan and the tribal team. We also released a revised administrative draft document in August for what we call the back check review, so that interested partners and tribes could see the edits that we were making. Following release of that back check reviewed administrative draft, we received comment letters from Yolo County, Solano County, and the Lower Sacramento River Delta North Regional Flood Management Planning Group. So we greatly appreciate their continued interest and response to us on these matters. Today, we are participating in the board's workshop and preparing to engage further with agency partners as needed to continue to address the key issues discussed today before public release. We're planning at this point to move towards a public release of the master plan and program EIR early in 2025, as discussed earlier today, including participation in a Yolo Bypass Cash Flow Partnership Forum and conducting an additional tribal workshop. A little bit closer look at our near-term schedule. As you can see, we're really busy preparing for additional engagement here. Some of these meetings have already been scheduled. More we're working on scheduling as we speak. So you'll see here that we have meetings that are still being scheduled with Yolo and Solano County program representatives. We have scheduled a meeting with the Lower Sacramento River Delta North Regional Flood Planning Group in early November. Thanks very much for that group for accommodating us at their meeting. And then we will still be scheduling a partnership organizing committee in November as well and plan to participate there.
The meetings with the RFMP, hopefully they've got some funding now instead of just a promise. That includes 2 board members, so we need to make sure that we know who they are. I have it there in my binder, but I'm not going to waste your time.
Okay. And so our goal ultimately is to continue to develop continued support for release of a public draft, and we know we have more work left to do. As such, partner engagement remains an extremely important part of this planning process. We have carefully considered all comments received to date on the administrative draft and are making improvements to the plan in response. This fall, we will continue to meet with partner agencies and with the organizing committee. In addition, a copy of the public review draft could be provided to partnership representatives in advance of the partnership forum early next year as a chance to preview an updated version that reflects changes made over the preceding months. In other words, give them an early peek before we do a formal public release as a courtesy to our agency partners. I also want to note that the land cover information being proposed and represented in Appendix D which is the ecosystem baseline report, is being revised and updated to incorporate the most current information. This revision requires extra time, which is one of the reasons why the release in early 2025 works the best. So we need time for both continued engagement as well as a chance to update the data land cover in the ecosystem baseline report. With that in mind, this concludes my portion of today's presentation, and I'm happy to pause again for additional questions and dialogue.
This President Dolan, I just looked, Lower Sac, Delta North, Member Brian Johnson, Member Joe Countryman. You're one of the two board members on that RFMP, so put November 6th. Okay. Look forward to hearing from you. Questions, comments, board members? There's not another DWR person that's going to come to the podium, is there?
There is not today.
Okay, just our star. Well, no,
Just
you put
me,
the
thank
star
you.
on us. There you are. Audience? I don't see anyone standing up or putting, you have a comment? What? I can't see someone.
Please.
Are you standing because you want to comment? Well, please come to the podium so we can hear you. Or we can bring the mic to you, but looks like you can make it. Thank you. Sabrina Snyder, Yolo County. Well, it's very nice to see you because I always just see your head with online meetings. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
You as well. Thank you, President Dolan, members of the board. We appreciate the presentation given by Mary Jimenez and Christine Van Skyke. So we appreciate DWR and Central Valley Flood Protection Board acknowledging Yolo County's comments or general concerns on the master plan administrative draft that we received as a partnership member. I want to point out the presentation on the master plan, it exemplifies our confusion and concern surrounding what work products are or recommendations are a DWR or flood board product versus a partnership product. The presentation was branded as a partnership document, including the partnership logo alongside that of the Flood Protection Board and DWR's logos. However, the partnership did not jointly develop or vet the presentation, just as partnership agencies were not involved in the development of the master plan. The county signed the partnership MOU with a commitment to improve communication and collaboration, as well as resolve policy and other issues critical to ensuring all boats would rise. As such, we believe that the notice of preparation on the Yolo Bypass Cash Flow Partnership master plan would serve that purpose and fulfill the goals the partnership aimed to accomplish. Instead, we were informed halfway through the master plan partnership planning process that it was a state product and no longer a partnership product. We were kept at arm's length in the planning process, and finally seeing the last iteration partnership branding and references left us with the impressions that we expressed in our most recent comment letter. On a final note, we want to reiterate, and it's our interest and willingness to engage with DWR and the Flood Board to address our concerns with the master plan, as well as the many other planning initiatives affecting the Yolo Bypass. We want to have a meaningful discussion to find solutions to ensure that all boats rise and all pillars are equally represented. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today, and thank you for that. It's not going to go unnoticed.
Thank you.
We see some more nods, not just across the place. Yeah, I can tell you that there's two board members that have great respect for county government. I'm just talking about our history. We were on the fire line with counties, but yes, it's the board. Member Johnson said it's not just two. Thank you for that. Any other comments, audience? Any hands up? Okay, next up will be, oh, I'm sorry, Member Johnson.
and I didn't give you the signal in time. My apologies, President Dolan. During just a moment ago, we were talking about our FMP meeting November 6th in the afternoon. And I just want to let folks know that I didn't have that on my calendar, and I have a very long-standing plans that I will not be able to change, where I'm along the California-Oregon border and will not have cell coverage. And so when that meeting comes and I'm not there, it's not because I don't want to. So I apologize in advance and I wanted to let you all know.
I don't know if the meeting can be adjusted, but yeah, for that. It can be recorded for you. Okay. Before we proceed to inviting the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers team, can we take a 10-minute break? We will. 10 minutes. Thank you. I do recognize it was longer than 10 minutes, and we weren't doing anything other than just some conversations and meeting old friends. Okay. Sorry for the delay, Army Corps of Engineers folks. We're back in session, so I'm going to ask Ms. Van Skyke to introduce this next section.
Great, thank you. Thank you, President Dolan. Thank you for part two. I would like to welcome our partners from the Army Corps of Engineers joining us online. Here we can see Brooke Schlenker, Planning Regional Technical Specialist. We also have Larissa Boland, Project Manager, both from the Sacramento District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and their staff are here to provide an update on the Federal Comprehensive Study. So Chavez, if you can pull up presentation for part 4. I'll hand it over to you, Brooke. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. And thank you to the board for inviting us to provide an update on the YOLO Bypass Comprehensive Study. We're excited to be here today to give that update. Alicia Kirchner, our Chief of Planning, wished that she could attend but had a conflict, so she sends her regards. But I apologize for not being able to be there in person. As Christine mentioned, we do have a few remote employees. I'm one of those remote from the DC area, but don't hold that against me. I did spend over a decade in Sacramento and consider it part of my home. So glad to be here to give this update today. We've got Larissa Boland and Yari Johnson online. I'm not sure if they have ability to unmute to introduce themselves. So we'll keep going, and maybe if questions come up where they need to, we can get them promoted to presenter mode.
But we're very happy to, we're very happy to have you here. This is President Dolan, and we see you put the San Francisco Bridge there, so we know you care about us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, we can go ahead and move to the next slide.
I'm assuming that's San Francisco.
So quick overview of the study. As many of you likely know, in order for the Corps to take on any kind of action, study, or otherwise, Congress has to tell us to do so. So for this study, the Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA of 2020, provided our authorizing language to conduct this comprehensive study. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means to be a comprehensive study. This is a little bit different from, if you've likely been involved in Corps feasibility studies, this is a little bit different, where it's a little bit of a layered study that includes feasibility level recommendations, but some other pieces as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in subsequent slides. But the authorization is for the purposes of flood risk management, ecosystem restoration, water supply, hydropower, and recreation. So a very broad authority for the Corps. And it's not noted on the slide here, but I think one other important piece of our authorizing legislation is that it directed us to coordinate with the state of California, applicable federal, state, and local agencies, non-federal interests, and specifically the YOLO Bypass and Cash Flow Partnership. So that's a little bit unique to our core authorities, but we are glad to have that as a solid reminder and requirement for us to do that consultation and coordination. So study purposes from a Corps perspective, you look at this broad array of study purposes that we're authorized to investigate. And then we kind of have to look at that through the lens of what are the Corps' missions. And so relative to Corps mission areas, the kind of overlapping purposes for the study are flood risk management and ecosystem restoration. The other aspects of the study will kind of come into it through that lens because of the nature of our authority and what we've been directed to do. Our sponsors are the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. Thank you so much for being a partner in this. You guys have been phenomenal to work with. I appreciate all the staff involvement daily sometimes to provide input and feedback into the process, as well as the representatives from the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, our other joint sponsor. So appreciate everybody's input and through the whole process. As was mentioned, our feasibility cost sharing agreement was executed a little over a year ago, September 2023. And that's what really allows us to start the process of the study process. Our estimated study costs and schedule is currently under review by the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but that's a requirement for any study that exceeds $3 million or 3 years. We have to go through quite an approval process to get approval of our scope, schedule, and budget. So that's where we are in that process right now. Someone mentioned earlier the vertical team alignment memorandum. We do have alignment on the scope of the study up through our division office in San Francisco and headquarters in DC, but still awaiting that approval from the Assistant Secretary of the Army's office. So that's a key piece there. Because of the larger scale of the study, the Corps has designated this study as a mega study due to the scope and complexity. And what that really means is additional oversight through all levels of the Corps, from the division office up to headquarters, to ensure the effective execution of the study. And with that, let's move on to the next slide. So this comprehensive study that's a little bit different, as I mentioned, it's so unique that we actually got, as you can see over on the right side of the slide there, implementation guidance or direction from our headquarters office in how to conduct the study, because we don't really have kind of set policies and procedures for how to conduct these comprehensive studies. So what that does is kind of give us the flexibility to look from a more holistic, programmatic kind of perspective at the whole YOLO bypass as a system, and make a variety of different types of recommendations that might include changes to operations and maintenance, changes to monitoring, R&D type recommendations. And then within that, we also have the ability to pursue a feasibility level approach for some of our recommendations that we might be able to go ahead and take to that feasibility level of design to recommend to Congress for design and construction. And then another piece of that is the potential to make recommendations for future feasibility studies, so kind of spin-off studies from this comprehensive study. And with that, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So this is just looking at it through a little bit different lens of what this comprehensive study is. As you can see, the circles at the top kind of represent where do we start with the comprehensive study. And that's really looking at what are the ongoing challenges in the bypass, what risks do those challenges bring about? And then another key, how much do we know about how to solve the problem? That might help us make a determination of what types of recommendations are best suited for that particular problem or suite of problems. We'll kind of feed that information through evaluation criteria, which are things like economic risk, life safety concerns, social risks and benefits, and environmental risks and benefits, in order to make, as I mentioned before, I won't go through all of those again, but the different type of suite of recommendations that can come out of this. The key recommendation I want to highlight on this slide is the bottom right, actions for design and construction, that feasibility level design. So this kind of highlights that we have this overarching comprehensive study process, and one type of recommendation is essentially a nested feasibility study within this comprehensive study. So that is, part of just trying to convey the scope and scale of the effort and the approach there. So all of those pieces will get wrapped into one report, the comprehensive feasibility study. And with that, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions before I kind of change gears and dive into a few more of the specifics.
Thank you for that. Board members and member Countryman.
Just a real quick question. Has the funding been provided to you? Are you actually working on this yet, or are you still waiting for funding?
We have been provided funding. When the study initiates, we essentially start with that $3 million scope. So we have funding to get started. We are up and running, but we have not been approved to exceed that $3 million scope. So that is the piece of it that is still to be determined.
Thank you.
Great question. Anyone else? Any hands up in the audience? Hands up online. Do we still have 46? Oh, 42 online. Like being home without having shoes on. Okay. Who's next? The podium is vacant.
I have a few more slides that I'm glad to jump back into when we're ready.
Yes, please do. You're on.
All right, thank you. So we'll move to the next slide and talk a little bit more about the specifics for this of the study. I know everyone in the room and online knows the significance of the Yolo bypass as the heart of the Sacramento River Flood Control Project, but it's important for us to kind of tell that story from a national perspective, to be able to convey that to ensure that everyone throughout the review team and the folks that are making the decisions about how to proceed and what recommendations to carry forward understand that this system reduces the risk to almost 1 million people, $150 billion in critical infrastructure. It's part of an ecosystem of national significance. We've got the Pacific Flyway, agricultural economy with $1.5 billion in annual revenue, the linkage to the water supply delivery system, and the historic and cultural significance of the area, both from a national heritage area perspective, as well as the Native American tribes that have an interest in the study area. We've had fairly extensive conversations and outreach with the tribes throughout the last year, particularly over the last 6 months or so, to get input. That's something that's really important to us, not only because of the need for it in this study area, but also the focus on ensuring that that communication and collaboration takes place from a core perspective. So we're excited to have those ongoing discussions with the tribes to get meaningful input on the identified problems that the study will try to solve all the way through the process to the types of recommendations that may come out of it. And with that, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So a large group of folks have put a lot of work into developing kind of the foundation for the study. There's still a lot more work to do, but pulling from a lot of the existing great information that's out there and workshops that have been held over the last year, we've developed a suite of problem statements, opportunities, and I won't go through those in detail, but they do largely align with other efforts that you've heard about today and updates there with problems associated with flood risk, with impaired hydrogeomorphic processes, with restricted fish passage, with access for tribes, with the water supply reliability, and so forth. As well as more policy and management type problems with lack of funding that has been discussed, and increased demand on the bypass. So with that, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So the study objectives for the comprehensive study, including the feasibility study component of the study, are consistent, and the objectives are what we use to measure the success of alternatives. So for this study, we've identified 6 objectives. These may very well get refined as we continue to get input and additional information. But our objectives are to reduce flood risk to life safety, property, critical infrastructure, to improve ecological function, to enhance fish ecology, to increase opportunities for recreational and tribal access to the Yolo bypass, to increase sustainability and resilience of the flood risk management system and its associated agricultural, riverine, and floodplain habitat, to improve quality of recreation and educational opportunities within the Yolo bypass. And again, those objectives are consistent through the comprehensive planning portion and the feasibility as well. And with that, let's move to the next slide, please. So our study constraints and considerations. So constraints from a core planning perspective are essentially the things that we must avoid. These things must be avoided versus considerations which inform the process. So our constraints are we don't want to cause unacceptable or unmitigable impacts to ESA listed species. The second constraint I think is important to highlight. The core ecosystem restoration features can't work towards existing required mitigation. So we can't include required mitigation, compensable mitigation as part of our restoration plan to fund those pieces. And the third, kind of an obvious constraint, we must comply with all applicable federal laws, policies, and regulations. Our considerations, develop a plan that aligns with the existing regional land use plans and policies. I think that's a key in just more of the process of how we play this out, and to ensure that we are working in lockstep with the ongoing efforts, developing plans for the bypass. And second, to avoid degrading existing high quality habitat. We don't want to make plans to restore an area or put in flood risk management features in an area that's already a high quality habitat area. And again, complying with laws and policies. So with that, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And we will see measures that largely overlap with the master plan conceptual features that you saw earlier with the graphic that we had some discussion about. So there shouldn't be any big surprises on these lists. General flood risk management, ecosystem restoration measures on this slide. We'll talk about a few other kind of buckets of measures or actions that can be taken to solve a problem on the next slide as well. But under flood risk management, I know the SAC weir gates were brought up earlier. We do have modifying weirs as an option for a measure under the project, or the study, excuse me, noting that all of these measures are essentially could contribute to the comprehensive planning portion. That doesn't necessarily mean that every measure on here might contribute to the feasibility level of detail. And I want to point out a couple that I think are important to note from that kind of perspective. We've got reoperate and optimize reservoirs. We've got raise or improve existing dams. Those are the types of things that we need and want to consider as part of the overall comprehensive planning portion, but will not be a focus of the feasibility level of detail pieces that get carried forward to any sort of recommendation for design and construction. And with that, let's go ahead and move to the next slide and see the remaining categories. We've got a list of measures under sustainable agriculture, operations and maintenance, water quality and recreation. And largely on this slide, you'll note, as I mentioned from the start, core mission areas are flood risk management and ecosystem restoration. So largely the things that we'll be considering will be kind of coming through that lens, but noting particularly for the comprehensive planning portion, the need to consider the holistic uses and needs of the bypass. So we may be able to make some recommendations as part of the comprehensive plan that reach outside of those traditional core flood risk management and aquatic ecosystem restoration lenses. In addition, recreation is an authorized component that we can incorporate into flood risk management and ecosystem restoration projects. So there could very well be recreation features if there is a need and a desire to have those in as part of feasibility level design to accompany a flood risk management and or ecosystem restoration recommendation. And with that, let's go ahead and move to the next slide and talk a little bit more about the feasibility level of detail. Which pieces are we focusing on to kind of bring into that feasibility level of detail for this first increment that would be included in this iteration of the comprehensive study? With that, we are largely the kind of the bottom line is what has been determined is in order to get flood risk management and ecosystem restoration benefits, whether you're talking about hydrologic frequency and duration or fish habitat, is to get more water into the bypass. And so focusing on kind of as a hinge point for the feasibility level design pieces, focusing on the northern bypass and potential widening of Fremont Weir. And with that, we'll go ahead and move to the next slide and we can kind of see what that very conceptually looks like. These are some conceptual alternatives that have been discussed and developed in order to kind of give us a starting point to dive into the feasibility level of detail. So starting on the left, you can see a non-structural flood risk management focused on the northern area. And what this really means, non-structural is a term that maybe some folks are familiar with and others may not be, and there are probably multiple definitions for it. So from a core perspective, non-structural flood risk management is largely getting people and infrastructure out of harm's way rather than redirecting the flow of the water. So largely what we're looking at under this conceptual alternative are relocations and emergency planning, noting Knights Landing, Verona, some of the immediate areas adjacent to the bypass as being the likely areas where those types of measures would be considered. Again, conceptual alternative that will be refined as the study proceeds, but just to start to kind of paint a picture of what these types of measures may look like. Moving to the right with the center conceptual alternative, this is looking at a multi-purpose focused on the northern area with widening Fremont Weir, the upper Elkhorn setback levee with habitat improvements in Upper Tule Canal, and additional transitory storage for flood risk management. So again, very broad brush at this point, conceptual alternatives, and maybe even a little premature to call them alternatives, concepts. And then on the far right, we've got kind of a combination approach where we can incorporate those structural improvements with the non-structural improvements from the far left. So with that, let's pause there. I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions on this portion before we talk a little bit about process.
Thank you for that and the pause. So let me look to board members to see if they have questions, comments. Everyone looks like they're pondering. This is President Dolan. It seems to me in this feasibility level detail, you're actually calling out specific projects that the Corps would be looking to implement, or are these just conceptual at this point?
These are conceptual at this point, and largely what we're trying to focus on for this feasibility level of detail, and I think the reason to highlight these is we want to focus where we have a lot of existing information that we can pull from, where we've got general, moving in the direction of alignment and consensus on the types of measures and plans that could be recommended. But these are, yes, very conceptual at this point. There's a lot of work to get from point A to point B to really tease these out in detail, and no specific plans or designs or anything like that have been developed, just kind of pulling these concepts together.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And it certainly is challenging to get agreement on some of these. And I really hope you're not putting on the list relocating Knights Landing community.
No. Thank you for that question for clarification. The emergency preparedness planning and relocations is probably a bit of a misleading term for those types of non-structural measures. It's really largely what is typically considered, and where we would start with, to see what may be feasible in this area would be elevating residential structures as warranted, and flood-proofing commercial property. So great, very much appreciate that question. No, not at all considering relocating Knights Landing or Verona, just looking at those non-structural measures to reduce risk there.
Oh, and thank you for that clarification. I live in Northern California, so I'm aware of the Hamilton City project and the city of Tehama. So you didn't move those, you helped them. Thank you. I don't see any board members nodding, audience nodding, hands up, question. Someone put something in the chat? Well, you get to read it.
Question from the chat. Are there transfer of risk concerns downstream with any of these conceptual alternatives? If so, what are the conceptual mitigation alternatives to address those transferred risks? That's from E. Chris.
Yeah, greatly appreciate that question. That is very unknown at this point. That is something that we will be very concerned about, and want to define and understand. That's something we've scoped to evaluate. Absolutely. So unknown if there would be at this point, just because we're not far enough in the process to have that information. But we're very much tracking that as a risk, and a need for evaluation to ensure that that does not take place.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the response to that as well. Did that prompt anyone else? No, 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 okay.
Okay, if we're ready, we'll move to the next slide. So where we are in the process, and I apologize to talk more in terms of process as we're still awaiting our approval of schedule. But the process starts, as I mentioned, with a feasibility cost share agreement, which we signed back in September of last year. We had a successful alternatives milestone meeting this past May, which essentially means that we have vertical alignment or alignment with our South Pacific Division office in San Francisco and our headquarters in DC on, as well as the sponsors in this case, on our array of alternatives that will be evaluated, and essentially the overall plan to develop the comprehensive plan and the feasibility level of design. So moving forward from that, where we are now is taking that information very early in the process of starting to kind of refine that. We always say, planning is a very iterative process. So we'll have multiple rounds of kind of refinements and improvements of each of these recommendations, measures, alternatives for both the comprehensive planning portion and the feasibility level evaluation. So as we move through this next phase, leading up to our tentatively selected plan milestone that we have shown here as TSP, tentatively selected plan. That's the phase where we will really develop the comprehensive strategy, develop our recommendations associated with that. We'll formulate and refine alternatives. We'll evaluate those alternatives and compare alternatives, and ultimately tentatively select a plan for recommendation. So that tentatively selected plan milestone is where we get vertical alignment and sponsor alignment on the tentatively selected plan that will then be documented in a draft report and released for reviews with the public, agency technical review, independent external peer review, and policy and legal review. So that draft report release kind of moves us into that concurrent review phase. Following that, we have an agency decision milestone meeting, and that is essentially where our tentatively selected plan is solidified based on the review and input from the concurrent reviews. And our tentatively selected plan is solidified into a recommended plan that we can then move forward with the feasibility level design to develop refined designs and costs for that plan. To prepare for final report development in the Washington level review and chief's report and ultimate recommendation to Congress on a project. So that's kind of where we are in the process. Again, awaiting that approval on schedule. So with that, I'll move on to the next slide and talk about some key takeaways and next steps. There we go. So as I mentioned, this study has been designated as a core mega study, acknowledging the complex, unique, comprehensive study authority. That what that means for us is additional core oversight with tiered communication. And what we mean by that is, a lot of coordination, collaboration with our vertical team, with our South Pacific Division office and headquarters, and an issue resolution structure to support study execution. So this is really for some of the high priority and maybe higher risk studies because of the large scale throughout the core, additional management structure to ensure that effective execution of the study. As I've mentioned multiple times, we're awaiting that approval on the scope and budget, or the schedule and budget for the study. We'll be anxious to get new information back to you on that as soon as we have that. Next steps on the comprehensive plan development, kind of in the near term, over the next 6 months or so, we'll begin or continue to refine our problems and opportunities to be addressed in the study. We'll develop our evaluation criteria. Like I mentioned, there's the economic, life safety, ecological, social type of metrics that we'll evaluate those and initiate the evaluation of those problems and opportunities to start to develop recommendations. For the feasibility level evaluation, we'll begin refining the alternatives, the conceptual, very conceptual, as we mentioned, alternatives that have been developed. And largely over the next 6 months, on the technical side, we've initiated the evaluation of the without project conditions. So what do those existing conditions look like in the bypass, and what will they look like in the future without the core project? So that's the hydraulic modeling, the ecological modeling, the documenting the economic setting. And what that does is allow us to build that baseline that we then compare our alternatives against to be able to document the benefits and cost and benefits and life safety benefits, the ecological benefits of any of the alternatives under development. And with that, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So how to stay in touch? We'll obviously love to come back and give you an update periodically as warranted. Folks can also go to our website to get more information. It's under development with more information to come there. We've got an email address linked here that will send a message to the team to get the message directly to us. You can also send an email to that email address to request to be added to the distribution list for our newsletter, which will be coming out in the next few months. And with that, that's all I have, pending any additional questions.
This is President Dolan, and just a request. I'm trying to understand your terms of virtual team and virtual alignment. Vertical, thank you. I don't know how to write clearly. So vertical alignment, vertical team, are they the same? Are they different? Could you sort of describe who is part of that vertical?
Yeah, you bet. The vertical team is, we kind of forget sometimes, but we are an Army organization. So we have a little bit of that Army type structure. And so the vertical team is, so we at the Sacramento district report to the South Pacific Division in San Francisco. And then the next level up in that vertical team is to the USACE headquarters in DC. So that's the vertical team. And I think we mentioned the vertical team alignment memorandum that has been signed that documents vertical team, so South Pacific Division and headquarters alignment on scope, schedule, and budget. I believe those are the ways we were using that term. But yeah, the vertical team is that division and headquarters structure.
Thank you for that clarity. Board members, this ends the presentation, so now's your time. Member Johnson.
Yes, thank you. So first off, I just want to thank you for the presentation. It's very well done and very clear, and that goes for all of the presentations. I have a comment that also is really for all of the presentations and for the comprehensive study and the master plan, which is I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the substance of what's at stake in these plans and how the world will be different after they're adopted and as the projects contemplated in them start to roll out. The ultimate goal isn't just to have a process and a plan, but to change the landscape, right? And I'm looking forward to hearing more about what that is. What will the consequences be for the variables that we're talking about? And if we have decisions to make or sets of alternatives to consider, what will those decisions be and what will be at stake in those decisions? And particularly for the state team, one of the things that I'll be looking toward is an assessment of how far these plans will go toward achieving the goals in the flood plan and the conservation strategy. And is it all of what we need for this period, or is it some part of it? And then after a couple of decades of working on this, we'll have to come back for another set of projects over the next few decades to implement the plan and the strategy. And the great thing about the flood plan and the conservation strategy is we should be able to tell, given the way that they're written. The flood plan is pretty direct about outcomes and projects, and the conservation strategy is remarkably explicit geographically for the variables considered, what type of uplift and change is required to be on pace for implementing it. So we should be able to know what the alternatives do, for implementing those two plans. And I look forward to hearing more about that. And that's one of the ways that I'll be evaluating any choices that we have to make here at the board.
Well said. Member Grego?
I want to join Brian in thanking all of the presenters today. It was really a lot of valuable information there. One observation that I'd like to note, though, is that when we look at the partnerships, I think it's really important that, you have as many people at the table. And so for me, I didn't notice like that private partnership. With my experience with Three Rivers, private partnerships are valuable people at the table that bring different opportunities. And so I just want to remind you that not to exclude those, whether it be through the Chamber of Commerce or whether it be through property owners that are near the project or, independent business people that have large scale projects within the counties of where these projects are located. Everybody should have a say and be a part of the discussion when it comes to these types of large projects. And so I just want to remind you of that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we, the board is reminded of that as well. Board members. Audience in the room? How about any presenters? You want to say something more? Our staff? No, come on.
It looks
Sabrina
like-
Snyder's coming up.
Yeah.
And I see your staff's not helping you, so we are going to wait for you.
I'm helping. I'm going to keep this button on for you.
Thank you. I insisted. So.
Hello again, Sabrina
Hello
Snyder.
again.
Yellow-
President Dolan, members of the board. Thank you, Brooke, for the presentation. That was really informative and helpful. I'm here, I think I made a public comment. It was April 12th at the last Central Valley Flood Protection Board workshop where the Army Corps came and presented on the comprehensive study. In that presentation, it was noted that the Corps had met with local leadership, and we offered the clarification that our leadership has not been met with by the Corps, I guess, or extensively by non-federal sponsors regarding this process. Our elected officials were really interested in learning more about the comprehensive study, and the county still has not been contacted at this point. We want to express our interest and our willingness to communicate directly with the Corps on this process. This is, we're Yolo County, we're a great resource for communication and knowledge of the landscape. And we're interested in knowing what potential actions mean for the county. So please contact us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If it's okay if I respond quickly.
Yes, please.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that comment. And we will reach out. You can also, that email address on the screen will go directly to me and the other folks that I mentioned in the beginning. So if I don't have a way to contact you directly, feel free to send that email address a note, and we can coordinate. I'd love to start that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate it. And I will send an email following up on this comment.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Yolo County, for your comments.
I don't see any other hands up. That was just a scratch, right? Just for you, Mary Jane. Any hands up online? No. Okay. Any summation? Ms.
I think so. Just thank you, Brooke, and your team for coming and presenting today. We appreciate that. We'll be working together as we develop this important plan for the region. Thank you for your time today.
You heard from a couple board members here, so I'm going to just add to that because I saw board members nodding with Member Johnson, Member Grego's important response to all this. So thank you to the presenters. I'm remembering April, this is much better, more detailed. more of interest, frankly. The whole thing's of interest, but this really gave some more clarity to what's going on. So we're looking forward to the next steps. And we will have presentations that the board will conduct, as well as all of the communication and engagement that the team is doing. So very well done, very well appreciated. So thank you all.
Thank you, President Dolan, and thank you, Mary Jimenez and Department of Water Resources for being part of our team today, and for your time as well, Jordan, our tribal liaison, and Andrea for leading and guiding us through this process. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
We're supposed to be here all the time, but you're welcome. Yeah, but look forward to more information there. So lots of things to read and to see. The PowerPoints are things we can continue to look at and decipher. All right, the next thing on our agenda then is there any public comment someone wishes to make that was not on the agenda, but is related to the jurisdiction of the board? I see our typical fan club is not here. Nothing online, no one standing up. Okay. Any final comments, board members? Going? Adjourned.